Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bobby Pate with the I.M.A.G.E program, and we welcome you to another edition of the I.M.A.G.E TV podcast. That's right, this is episode 2. And in episode 1, we talked about the 4 basic principles. That's right, the 4 basic principles. Now, with us today, we have, to my right, Bert Knapp.
Thank you, sir.
And Bert is a former inmate who has recently has re-entered society, and we're going to get into that. We also have my co-host Ken Silver with us. Ken is also a part of the foundation of the I.M.A.G.E program. And to my left, we have Pastor Ben Bell. That's right. Everyone knows Ben Bell. He works at the YMCA. He's also an activist and a wonderful man. So I want to get into the show right now, and we want to talk about the 4 basic principles, kind of where we left off at. So first, we talked about Christian living. Second, we talked about racial equality. And then we talked about eliminating gang involvement. And last but not least, we talk about successful re-entry into society. And that brings us into today's podcast and today's show, successful re-entry into society. Ken Silver, my co-host, is going to break it down wonderfully. Ken, let her roll.
Okay, well, we feel that there's 2 basic components in a successful re-entry. The first has to start while people are still incarcerated. If they don't have the desire to take the initiative to do the things that need to be done while they're still in prison, they're probably not going to be very successful when they get out. But we've got our guest today, Mr. Bert Knapp, and Bert just was recently released, and we're going to have him talk a little bit about the resources that are available while you are in prison, and maybe we'll highlight some of the problems involved. But Bert, first of all, tell us, if you want to get prepared for re-entry while you're still in prison, what are the resources available to you?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. Some of the resources available to you while in prison is you're able to get your GED. Most jobs take a GED or some high school equivalency. You're also able to go to a life skills program in most prisons that you're in, which will offer you some basic computer skills, some mock interviewing, some master applications of resumes. And then in most prisons you have a caseworker as far as for working.
Do you actually have access to the internet while you're in prison?
No, you do not have access to the internet.
These programs allow you access to the internet under certain controlled environments, or they just tell you how to do it if you were ever allowed to get on the internet?
Well, you can go to the our workforce development person who's a caseworker, and she'll the facility I just left, which was CRC Old Newton. It was a woman who was able to help us apply for jobs before we were released and get that already going for us upon release.
So you can get help with a resume?
Oh, yes.
Okay. How about being able to network, to talk to people outside or prospective employers? Do you have that opportunity?
I mean, that's about the only person you could go through to do that, unless you had people on your own on the street that would be willing to do that for you.
Well, I know some of the prisons have outside employment opportunities. Is that something that's very common?
Yeah, most of the minimum facility prisons have jobs outside of the facility that you can get that will offer you a little more money than what's inside the facility. But them are far and few in between, and there's.
So these programs that are available, can anybody get into those? Is there a waiting list, or how easy it is to take advantage of these?
Well, so for the GED, almost everybody in the prison can get into it. For the life skills class, there's about 12 people per 3 sessions per year that runs that you could get into. There's also some classes that you could get into through grant programs. Like in the prison I was in, there was a grant program called the Circa Grant Program that also went through Evelyn K. Davis, Project Iowa, and United Way as well. And it taught not just how to, so we had TDL, and we also had labor's union training, but it also had fatherhood classes, and it had classes to get your restitution taken care of and Iowa legal aid. But these classes you have to be 6 months within a release, and there's still only so many beds. And there's only probably 3 classes a year that are available. And the the prison system that I was in, CRC, it's about 390 to 400 people. So it's not very many people, not a lot of opportunity to get in there.
Now, do you have a counselor that helps you decide what you might take that would be beneficial, or do you just throw a dart at the board or pick what you want, or how does that work?
So again, in CRC, there's probably 4 counselors for 400 inmates. So
Wow, that's like 100 inmates per counselor.
yeah,
Obviously, you don't get to spend much time with your counselor.
no, you don't get to develop a personal relationship where they understand you more than just a piece of paper. So,
You know, we're trying to identify problems associated with reentry as well as come up with possible solutions. And it looks to me like maybe we've identified one problem right now, and that's the lack of counselors.
Yes, sir.
And I know there are budgetary constraints, but the last I knew, it cost $35,000 or $40,000 a year to keep somebody in prison, and that may be low now with the cost of living. But you know, if you can keep 1 or 2 people from going back to prison every year, you paid for a counselor, and looks to me like it would make sense if we took a little harder look at getting more counselors involved. But the unions are involved in this too. Is that correct?
yeah, so like I said, the last class that I took through Circa was the Labor's Union cohort. So it gave me 120-hour credited class hours upon release, plus some certifications in general and construction 1 and 2, and flagger and CPR and first aid. And then the fatherhood and the anger classes were through like Evelyn K. Davis and Project Iowa and United Way. They were also involved in it. But what I think would be helpful is that if the counselors were able to come up through in there and sit in there while we took these classes, where we're actually opening our heart and they learn who we are, what our struggles are, what our strengths are, things that could help us upon release, and then maybe they could put us in a better place and position. But like I said, there's 400 inmates for 4 counselors, so it's hard for a counselor to have the ability to do that when they're so far stretched.
Well, that's a great insight, and hopefully we can make a difference and get some action on something like that. You mentioned CPR and some other things. Are there quite a few OSHA classes that you can take while you're in there?
No, so I was able to get an OSHA class taken, but that was through the Circa program.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about the only class offered that can give you some real stuff as far as coming to the street and learning some type of employment opportunity, to learn something that can give you an employment opportunity.
Well, I assume everybody that's in prison is trying to line up and take advantage of these courses so they can get ready to be released. Is that true?
No.
Is
No,
that not?
not at all. Not at all. It's only a select few of people that actually want to put the time, energy, and effort into be a better member of society and come out here and try to change their little piece of the world. So,
Well, that's disappointing.
yeah, it is.
Well, Bert, thanks for your insight and your input, and thanks for taking the time to come down here tonight.
Yes,
we
sir.
really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
And Bert, I've got a question for you.
Yes,
I do remember you after going into CRC with Dwight Jackson and being able to speak with you, and I thought that was real interesting. Also to see you back out here and to see you on track. Now, we talked, or you actually spoke with us a little bit about counselors and the lack of the support for counselors in the institution. Do you think that is the same situation even when you get out and you face parole and probation? Kind of similar situation where you still have to have that hunger from inside coming out.
Yeah. So I would say that upon release, even a man who is full of hunger and diligence and zeal to do the right thing faces obstacles out here that just get in the way, barriers. Like for me, I've spent 18 years in prison, and I'm computer illiterate. So I struggle to get on a computer and fill out applications. I struggle to get on a computer and set appointments. I struggle to get on a computer and do these things. I think other barriers would be lack of transportation, or just lack of the skills that it would take to get a job that could actually push us further in this world out here. 2 times I've actually went back to prison on relapses because I broke my back when I was 22, and I've came out and worked dead-end jobs that literally my back broke in half, and it caused me to have a back surgery, and I relapsed, and I ended up back in prison. I just got out after doing a year on a dirty UA because of this. So, if we was able to come out here and find some resources that could lead us into something that could be a career as opposed to a dead-end job, it would, it would help us a lot, you know.
Well, that's our next subject. Bobby, take it away, and we'll be talking about what we can do after we get out of prison as far as successful reentry.
All right. Well, coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to speak with Pastor Bell, and we're going to break down kind of the Christianity principles and the support that comes with reentry and just being successful in society as it relates to reentry. We'll be back on the Image Show after these messages. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, on the Image Show. This is the Image TV podcast, and we've got Ralph Hall to my right joining us now in the studio. But we want to speak with Pastor Bell right now. As we talked about, Pastor Bell is very important in the Des Moines community. He is a Marine. He is also a pastor, and he has served for our country. And Pastor Bell is also very well educated. He has his PhD. And so I would like to introduce Pastor Bell. Pastor Bell?
Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you, and such a necessary subject to talk about, reentry. We know that when we look at people that are trying to enter back into society, many times there's a stigma attached to someone who's been in prison. And so we look for people who are caring and friendly enough with those individuals to help them reenter successfully. One of the things that I really appreciate about my mother and my father and our upbringing was that they taught us what I call the intrinsic value and worth of all people, that all people are worthy of dignity and respect. And so I try to live that way. And when I look at guys who've had these struggles, what I think about is my upbringing. My mom and my dad, they had me in basketball, AAU, they had me in Boy Scouts, they had me in church. My mother was a youth leader. My father, he was a deacon. And so all those things were in place for me. Never been arrested. I'm probably the kind of guy that you would think would not want anything to do with people who've had those kind of issues. But what happened to me was I said, they need what I had. So I'm trying to help them with that aspect of their lives. So what's the first thing a guy needs when he gets out? He needs a good, clean place to stay. So we have transformational houses. Man, they're nice. You go buy them. You can't even tell that those are the kind of places that people would think someone would live in. In fact, one of them is about 6 blocks away from where our governor lives. She may not even know it, but it's a beautiful spot. And so we like seeing that for guys. We know they need not only housing, they need somebody who can say, hey, you're going to need a job. You're going to need to support yourself. There are some wonderful places in our community. One of them is called Project Iowa. I actually was instrumental in building that model. We went to San Antonio, Texas, and looked at a place called Project Quest, which stands for Quality Education and Skills Training. And they had it where the community college would provide the training. They could get a certificate. You know, certificates cost no money. Degrees cost a lot of money. So they get a certificate that they could use anywhere in the country and the world. Now that guy has a skill and he's connected to a sector where he can go and apply for a job that he's already proven he's competent to receive. Also, we had what we call mock interviews. We gave them emotional intelligence so they understand the value that they bring to the table just as a human being, that the workplace becomes better because I'm in it. So when you look at those kinds of things, those are the basic needs that a guy has. A place to stay, a job, support group, people who love him, gonna keep him accountable to set goals and pursue those goals.
So, Pastor, if I just walk out of prison tomorrow and they dump me off in Des Moines, and by the way, I don't know if you can help us or not, but somewhere along the line we need to take a look at support systems and reentry in some of the other areas, Cedar Rapids or Quad Cities or so on. And so I think in future podcasts we'll try to see what we can find out about that and investigate the possibilities. But right now, what do I do when they dump me out in Des Moines? Who do I call? Where do I go? Give me some insight on that.
Yes, sir. You're looking for dads with a purpose. It's I'm going to call it not necessarily a one-stop shop, but it connects you to many other things that you may need. So if it's not in our wheelhouse, excuse me for using the term wheelhouse, but if it's not one of our competencies, more eloquent term, we will refer you to Project Iowa. We can get you the children and families of Iowa. We can get you to Evelyn K. Davis Center for Working Families, so you can take your NCRC to see how competent you are, even to sit in the classroom and further your education. So Dads with a Purpose, all you have to do is type that in somewhere, Dads with a Purpose. If you're not digitally literate, get on your cell phone and say, Dads with a Purpose, and it'll show up.
Everybody's phone literate, aren't they?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
So Dads with a Purpose is not just something to do with parenthood,
No,
but you can give us all kinds of resources.
certainly. Yes,
Well,
sir.
that's
Yep.
Awesome. We've got Ralph here
Uh-huh.
that has been out for several years successfully, and I think we need to talk to him a little bit about some of the obstacles he faced in
Yes.
the past, because he's had several years to try to readjust.
Certainly.
What did you see the big problem when you came out, Ralph?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate that. I think, for me, it was over 25 years ago. So
A lot fewer resources then than there are now.
I feel like there were fewer resources. The obstacles were, I think there were probably more obstacles back then because there weren't as many resources as there is now.
Right.
I'm sure
So,
that's true.
I think one of my main obstacles getting out and getting back on track was just keeping my focus and having the mindset to accomplish what I really set out to do. So that was one of my main things. So you could consider it an obstacle because I didn't have a resource I can call and say, hey, where can I go for this or this type of training? So now I see like more training and more places you can go. Evelyn K., what Pastor Bell was just referring to, a lot of those organizations that are around now, and I feel like those are very, very helpful compared to years ago when there weren't as many resources.
So in your day, you just had to use your good judgment and find the right people to stay with and the right people to stay away from, I assume.
That's pretty much a true statement right there.
Okay.
Seriously.
What do we have today to help people in a support system when they get out? Pastor, counseling, or groups they can go to? Talk to us about that.
Well, we have most of the guys who go to prison, they go there as fathers.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that they miss out on is that critical time that they need with their children so they can bond, so they can help their children mature. So what we talk to them about is using the influence that they have as fathers. Their children are forgiving. Go back and say, hey, I spent time away from you. Let's talk. So we talk about manhood. What do men do? Men raise their children.
Amen.
They go back and reconnect with the mother and say, hey, we may not be romantically involved, but we need to raise this child together. So we talk about co-parenting in a non-romantic relationship. We try to connect them to other men who have had their same struggles. So they say, hey, man, listen, this is what we do. We take care of our responsibilities. So when we talk about manhood, values, setting goals,
Yes.
we have found out that when a guy is connected to his kids, he only recidivates at a rate. In other words, we only have about like 15-20% of guys who end up going back to prison. That kid makes them say, I need to stay free and work a job.
Yes.
So that's a very powerful cohort of guys, because one guy can look at another guy and say, hey, listen, it gets tough, but let's go. Come on. We're dads. Let's make this happen. So they have their own support group, and they can talk to each other about things they may not even say to a woman. Like, I hurt, I'm in pain. Men don't like using words like vulnerable, So we have to talk about that kind of stuff too.
I guess I got a question. So most people out there right now that may be listening or watching this podcast, you may have some family members that are coming out of incarceration. You may have some loved ones maybe who are on their way to being incarcerated, whatever it may be, that may need help. And they may be looking for a transitional place to live. They may not have a place to parole to. Well, we have two men in here right now that sitting to my right and to my left that are both involved with transitional housings. Ken Silver is also affiliated with the Discovery House.
Yes.
And Pastor Bell, Dads with a Purpose. Could you guys briefly give some information on that for people that may be coming out, some information as far as a telephone number, a website, or how do the viewers out there get in touch with you if they want to get involved with the transitional living?
Sure.
Pastor Bell?
For Dads with a Purpose, all you have to do is go to either Dads with a Purpose website, or you can email dwpdsm.com. dwpdsm.com. You hit that. The application's online. Any other services that we offer are also online, and we have people who stay on top of that website. So we'll be looking for those of you that have those needs.
And Ken?
Well, Discovery House is, we've got 3 houses side by side with a total of 17 men. And it's a faith-based program. We have Bible studies on Wednesday night. We ask people to go to the church of their choice. We have them go to at least one meeting a week. The main thing is that we want the men to be able to hang around and support each other.
Yes.
I tell everybody when you come to the house, this is not just a place to get in and out of the rain. We want you here helping your brothers. We want you here to support each other. If you've got a problem, we want you so close that you can go talk to one of your other residents.
Yes.
And so we're very proud of what's going on there. We're very well accepted by the Department of Corrections and the Polk County parole system. And we've got a pretty good track record. Like I tell these guys, this is not a halfway house. It's not a three-quarter house. This is transitional living.
There you go.
And we're very sticklers on being clean and neat and so on. And right after we opened, I went over there and did an inspection, and I saw a couple dirty dishes in the sink in the one house, and there was about a half a can of pop sitting on the dining room table. So I got everybody together and gave my little speech about, we're going to be clean and neat and so on. Afterwards, one of the guys got me cornered and he says, "Why are you so nitpicky?" I said, "You know what? Someday you're going to meet a new woman and you're going to be glad I trained you so well." And that's kind of the thrust of the transition is we teach these guys, you take care of your property, you mow the yard, you're good neighbors.
Yeah.
And so when you get out, hopefully these traits will follow you and go back with your families. Pastor, I just preach and preach and preach that the foundation of our society is the family unit.
Yes.
And we've got to get our families back together, and the fathers taking care of their responsibilities. And,
Most definitely.
and if we can do that, a lot of these other problems will go away.
It's true.
These young people will be taught right. So we're happy with the transition housing we've got, and thanks for bringing it up.
Oh, no problem. Well, it looks like we are just about ready to go into a break. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back on the I.M.A.G.E TV podcast after these messages. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, on the new I.M.A.G.E TV podcast. And we were speaking with Pastor Bell and talking about some different things. Pastor Bell, can you continue to tell us a little bit more about what we were getting into?
Sure. One of the wonderful things about the partners that we have, they understand that setting goals is necessary. That you have to say, these are the things I want to accomplish. So what activities or what actions do I need to take to get there? So sometimes we talk to them even about like setting goals, like they have this thing called SMART. It's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. If they will do those things, they will hit their goal every time. And so every agency that we talk to, they may not use that specific model, but they talk about where do you want to go. And I think dialing it back even to the prison system, if they could have what they call collaborative training for the counselors that are in prison, before that guy leaves, that counselor should say, "Hey, you and I need some buy-in on where you're headed when you leave here." Then that could continue on the outside. So everyone that we deal with in terms of partners, they look at where a guy wants to go, what skills he has, where his heart's at, where his head's at, so we can move further. So when we send them to agencies, we normally send them to agencies that are big on them setting goals, because if I set the goal, then I'm probably going to pursue the goal. So that's where we're at with that.
You know, one of the things that disappointed me, Pastor, when Bert was talking about the programs that are available in prison, was there's a small percentage of the inmates that even avail themselves to that.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, we're not getting these people interested in improving themselves. And if they're not interested when they're in prison, what's going to happen when they get out?
Right.
So I think your assessment of having someone in prison that can help motivate them, give them goals, let them know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and get them started, I think that's very important.
Sure. But
Yeah.
you know, Ken, it could be somewhat of a challenge. But something tells me if you would make goal setting a condition of release, then you might
Well,
get a
that
little
makes
bit more,
sense,
you
doesn't
might
it?
get a little more buy-in
Yeah.
on that.
Everybody will buy in.
I believe so.
And just to reiterate what Pastor Bell and Ken were saying, I really do believe like today, now, it's easier and a lot more, it's out there more. It's there for you. You know, when you get out of prison or whatever facility you're in or whatever you're trying to do, your reentry program, I see all the new programs out there now that are, they're just very helpful. So I think it's really all about the guy coming out and really wanting to be involved in it. So
what you're really saying is we've taken a lot of the excuses for failure away.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that true?
yes,
Yes,
sir.
it is.
So we're putting the shoes back on the people saying, hey, it's available.
Right.
Man up, take advantage of it. Let's hit those goals.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to add?
We just want anyone who has a need, come see us. If we can't do it, we know somebody who can, and we'll even drive you there
Yeah.
to those persons if necessary. We're going to eliminate the risk of failure because your success is important to all of us.
Boy, you sound like one of those junior high school chants, you know. If we can't do it, no one
That's
can.
right.
All
That's right.
I think it's also important to add that, you know, the fatherhood program is right here in the inner city of Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah.
Actually, now there's even the fatherhood and the motherhood
Yeah.
program
Yeah.
through the Des Moines YMCA, Grub Y, and also through the Evelyn K. Davis Center for Working Families.
Yes.
And, you know, there's opportunity all throughout central Iowa, I think, for people that are coming out of prison, looking to better themselves, looking to get child support reduced, and just get involved with positive interaction.
Well, you know, obviously, when you listen to us, you know that we're prejudiced because all we talk about is men. But there's resources available to the women, too.
That's
Yes,
right.
there is.
And they
That's
can
right.
get a hold of Pastor and his programs just as much as the men.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not that we don't always think about women. We think about them all the time. But then when we come to the program, we talk about ourselves.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure, is the motherhood program also offered through the YMCA?
It is. All they have to do is go to John R. Grubb and ask for me, and we'll get them lined up.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me.
My goodness, are you all right? Your shoes still on?
We need to get that out of there.
Wrap it up, Bobby.
Let's wrap.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of the I.M.A.G.E TV podcast. Coming up next week on episode 3, we're going to talk about employment. We're going to talk about transportation. We're going to talk about education. Boy, this is really getting great. We had Pastor Bell, Ken Silver, Ralph Hall, and we even had Bert Knapp, who has left the studio already. I encourage you to tune in to the I.M.A.G.E TV podcast. That's a wrap.
Amen.